My name is Clara Bennett, 36 years old, lead senior account director at one of the top industrial supply firms on the East Coast. For 7 years, I built every piece of Ethan Hale's startup from the ground up, cold called factory owners until my throat split, sat through 12-hour client dinners chugging antacids between shots of bourbon, sacrificed 2 promotions at my own company to lock in exclusive partnership contracts for his tech brand. We'd gone from splitting gas station burritos in his beat-up 2016 Camry to picking out custom wedding bands and touring waterfront bridal boutiques. I truly believed we were the kind of partnership people wrote sappy relationship articles about, built on equal grit and quiet loyalty. That illusion shattered on my 36th birthday, behind the twisted metal of my own luxury sedan. Dispatch called my cell at 7:14 p.m., the exact minute my birthday dinner reservation was supposed to start. The automated voice crackled through my Bluetooth, alerting me to a minor collision registered under my vehicle's VIN, 3 miles north of our downtown apartment. I grabbed my wool blazer off the kitchen counter, tossed the wrapped leather watch I'd bought Ethan for our engagement anniversary into my purse, and drove 20 minutes through rush hour traffic with a hollow, anxious twist in my gut. I'd asked Ethan to swing by the bakery to grab my custom vanilla raspberry cake on his way to meet me. He texted 40 minutes prior saying he'd run a quick errand with his new junior admin, Mia Carter, and would catch up to me soon. I didn't think twice about it then. Ethan constantly rambled about how understaffed his admin team was, how Mia was fresh out of NYU and needed extra mentorship to keep up with client schedules. I'd even signed off on her quarterly performance bonus 2 weeks prior, blind to what that mentorship really entailed. When I pulled into the shoulder of the highway off-ramp where the crash had happened, I spotted my navy Mercedes first, front bumper crumpled against a concrete guardrail. Ethan leaned against the driver's side door, running a hand through his styled brown hair like he was rushing to smooth out a lie before I arrived. Next to him stood Mia, 24, slight frame, oversized cream sweater swallowing her shoulders, fingers picking at the hem nonstop like she was terrified to make eye contact with me. My gaze dropped her collarbone within 3 seconds flat, and every warm memory I'd clung to for 7 years curdled cold in my chest. Resting against her skin was a delicate pink diamond pendant on a thin white gold chain, the exact piece I'd found the receipt for tucked inside Ethan's tailored suit pocket 3 nights earlier while I was folding his laundry. The invoice had listed a $7,200 luxury jewelry boutique in Manhattan, dated 2 weeks prior, no recipient name printed on the slip. At the time, I'd stupidly convinced myself it was an early birthday gift he'd hidden to surprise me. Clara, thank God you're here. It's nothing serious. Ethan rushed out before I could speak, stepping between me and Mia like he was physically blocking me from studying the necklace around her neck. I was dropping Mia home after finalizing the West Coast pitch deck, hydroplaned over a puddle on the off-dash ramp, and oh injuries, just cosmetic damage to your car. Insurance is already filed. I nodded once, my jaw tight, forcing a neutral smile I'd mastered after years of negotiating hostile corporate contracts, dropping her home on my birthday. You promised we'd have dinner at that waterfront restaurant I booked months ago. Remember? The one with the private patio overlooking the harbor. Mia's head shot up at my words, her eyes wide with a flicker of guilt that didn't match Ethan's practiced ease. He snapped his hand around my forearm, gripped firmer than necessary, and tugged me a step away from the young admin, voice dropping sharp enough to cut through the hum of passing traffic. Come on, don't be unreasonable, it's pouring rain. Mia lives alone in a sketchy neighborhood over in Queens. I couldn't leave her stranded here waiting for an Uber alone at night. I'll make the dinner up to you tomorrow, I swear it. I pulled my arm free from his grasp, the rough fabric of his suit jacket scraping against my wrist. You couldn't wait 30 minutes to drop her off before meeting me for my birthday? The dinner reservation can't be rescheduled. They booked 2 months in advance. His expression shifted, the soft apologetic mask slipping to reveal raw irritation he'd never let show in front of me before. It's just a dinner, Clara. Mia's safety matters more than one stupid reservation. Can you not get past this for 5 minutes? Before I could fire back, a rideshare sedan pulled to a stop behind my wrecked Mercedes. Ethan didn't hesitate for a single second. He grabbed Mia's canvas tote bag off the pavement, slung it over his own shoulder, and gestured for her to climb into the back seat. I'll text you when I get back to the apartment, okay? Don't sit here overthinking this. He tossed the line over his shoulder without glancing back at me, climbed into the Uber beside Mia, and the vehicle peeled away into the misty dark before I could utter another word. I stood alone on the wet asphalt for 10 full minutes, rain spotting my blazer and soaking through the toes of my leather boots, staring at the empty space where their car had vanished. Every small, off moment from the last 6 months replayed on a loop in my brain. Ethan coming home reeking of sweet coconut perfume that didn't match any of my scents. Him hiding his work laptop in his home office closet instead of leaving it on the kitchen counter like he always had. Him canceling 3 separate weekend trips we'd planned last minute with vague, admin overtime, excuses. I brushed every red flag off as stress from his company's rapid expansion, told myself I was being paranoid for overanalyzing minor inconsistencies. Now that pink diamond pendant burned behind my eyelids every time I blinked, proof my intuition hadn't been overactive. It had been screaming warnings I'd chosen to ignore. I drove the damaged Mercedes back to our high-rise apartment alone, unlocked the front door at 9:47 p.m., and flipped on every overhead light in the open-concept living room. I set the unopened birthday cake box on the marble counter, poured a glass of Pinot Noir that sat untouched for hours, and waited for Ethan to walk through the door. Midnight ticked by, then 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and my phone never pinged with a single text or call from him. No apology, no update on Mia's ride, no mention of my abandoned birthday dinner. I sat cross-legged on our leather couch all night, scrolling through old photos of us from college, from our first business win, from the weekend we'd gotten engaged last spring, and each picture felt more hollow than the last. By dawn, my eyes stung from exhaustion and quiet, suppressed grief. I hadn't cried yet, not fully. My corporate conditioning kicked in, forcing me to compartmentalize the betrayal instead of unraveling immediately. I needed hard proof before I confronted him, not just a necklace and a half-empty receipt tucked in a suit pocket. At 6:30 a.m., I grabbed my tote bag and headed down to the cafe on the ground floor of our building, the same spot Ethan stopped every weekday to grab his dark roast coffee before heading to the office. I planned to grab a cold brew and head straight into my client meeting, but when I pushed open the glass cafe door, I spotted him instantly, sitting at the window counter like he'd been waiting specifically for me to walk through the door. He still wore the same wrinkled navy suit from the night before, dark circles pooled under his eyes, a small velvet jewelry box resting on the table between his coffee mug, and a paper cup of vanilla latte. He stood up fast when our eyes locked, plastering on the warm, charming grin he used to win over investors and clients alike, like nothing catastrophic had happened 12 hours prior. Happy birthday, baby. Did I know I messed up last night? I stayed late at the office cramming through Mia's project files, so I could wrap everything up fast and make it up to you today. He slid the velvet box across the table toward me, popping the clasp open to reveal a cheap Swarovski crystal necklace, nothing close to the high-end pink diamond Mia wore around her throat the night before. Got this for you. Picked it up yesterday between meetings. I didn't text last night because I didn't want to wake you once I realized how late I'd be stuck working. I stared down at the gaudy crystal pendant, then lifted my gaze to the paper latte cup beside his elbow, Mia's favorite drink. I'd heard her mention it once in passing during a company team lunch last month. I didn't reach for the jewelry box, just smiled faintly, a bitter, empty curve of my lips that Ethan completely misread as forgiveness. He visibly relaxed, thinking his cheap gift and half-baked lie had smoothed over the night's tension, grabbed his coffee mug, and rushed toward the cafe exit before I could press him for more details. I followed him out the front door seconds later, my shoes clicking against the concrete sidewalk as I chased after him to the busy crosswalk at the end of the block. The traffic light turned red as I reached the curb, and I froze mid-step when I saw Mia standing on the opposite side of the street, leaning against a street lamp waiting for Ethan. He caught sight of her instantly, his whole face softening into a gentle, tender smile I'd only seen him wear for me in our earliest years together. No trace of the sharp irritation he directed at me the night before. He crossed the street the second the light shifted green, handed her the vanilla latte he brought from the cafe, and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear with a slow, affectionate gesture that twisted my stomach into knots. Mia looped her arm through his, sipped the latte, and whispered something quiet that made Ethan laugh, his head dipping down to meet hers like they were completely oblivious to every stranger rushing past them on their commute. I stood alone on the empty sidewalk, clutching the Swarovski necklace, so tight the metal edges dug into my palm hard enough to break skin. A tiny bead of red blood seeped onto the clear crystal chain, smudging the shiny silver finish, and Ethan never once glanced back over his shoulder to check if I was still standing there watching them. They leaned into each other, walking shoulder to shoulder through the morning rush crowd, and that's when I felt the first crack in the wall I'd built to hold back all my hurt. I opened my fingers and let the cheap birthday necklace slip out of my grasp. It clattered onto the concrete pavement, and I didn't bend down to pick it up. Every single chance I'd given him to be honest had been thrown away for a 24-year-old admin with an expensive pink diamond around her neck, and the worst part was, he didn't even have the decency to hide his affection for her in broad daylight. I drove straight to my corporate office after that encounter, pushed back all my morning client calls for 2 hours, and locked myself inside my private conference room with Ethan's work laptop. He left it at our apartment overnight, too distracted by Mia to grab it on his way out. I'd never snooped through his files before this day. I'd always trusted him fully, believed our partnership was built on radical transparency. But I clicked open the password-protected admin folder labeled and see project drafts without hesitation, and the screen flooded with hundreds of photos of Mia, candid shots of her laughing at team dinners, close-ups of her sleeping in his passenger seat, blurry selfies of them kissing in hotel stairwells from business trips I thought he'd taken alone. He'd created an entire dedicated subfolder just for her, labeled with her first name in bold font, filled with months of hidden images and saved text threads I hadn't known existed. Meanwhile, our shared photo album on his desktop only held a handful of blurry engagement snapshots, untouched and ignored for half a year. My chest ached as I scrolled through the files, processing the weight of every secret he'd buried right under my nose. For 7 years, I'd put his career above my own happiness, sacrificed milestones, friends, even a shot at international relocation to keep his startup afloat, and he'd spent every spare minute I wasn't around building a separate, secret life with Mia behind my back. I closed the laptop, shut my eyes, and made a quiet promise to myself. I wouldn't beg for explanations. I wouldn't throw screaming fits. I wouldn't beg him to choose me. I'd gather every piece of evidence, lay all his lies out bare, and walk away from everything we'd built together before he could destroy what little self-respect I had left. That afternoon, Ethan texted me a reminder we had a pre-scheduled bridal boutique appointment at 2 p.m. We picked out our wedding venue 3 months prior, set a fall ceremony date, and planned to finalize my wedding gown selection that day. He pulled up outside my office building in my wrecked Mercedes 10 minutes early, leaning on the car hood like nothing devastating had unfolded 12 hours before, his tone warm and cajoling when I climbed into the passenger seat beside him. Come on, don't give me the silent treatment still, Clara. I already booked a 2-week trip to the Maldives for our honeymoon. Whatever dress you fall in love with today, I'll cover every single custom alteration charge, no matter the cost. I stared straight ahead through the windshield, not acknowledging his attempts to butter me up, and didn't speak a single word the entire drive to the upscale bridal shop downtown. Inside the boutique, floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with golden afternoon sunlight, rows of lace and satin wedding gowns hanging on polished racks, the faint scent of jasmine candle wax hanging thick in the air. The bridal assistant helped me slip into a tailored lace mermaid gown, the fabric hugging every curve of my frame perfectly, and when I stepped onto the mirrored fitting platform, I caught Ethan's reflection behind me in the glass. He sat on a velvet love seat against the back wall, wearing that same practiced, flawless smile he pulled out for every investor pitch, but I caught a whiff of that same coconut perfume clinging to his dress shirt collar, Mia's signature scent, lingering on his closed hours after they'd met for coffee that morning. I turned to face him, the veil draped over my shoulders soft against my skin, and cut straight to the question burning in my throat. No more dancing around the obvious lies. Who is Mia to you, Ethan? What exactly is going on between the two of you? His smile vanished instantly, wiped clean off his face like I'd swiped it away with a cloth. His jaw clenched tight, eyes hardening with unmasked frustration, and he turned his head to stare at the wall instead of meeting my gaze. Can we not do this here, Clara? We're in the middle of picking out your wedding dress. Everyone working here can hear us arguing. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. It's exhausting. I stepped off the fitting platform, walked past him to the dressing room to peel the wedding gown off my body, and didn't spare him a single glance as I slipped back into my work slacks and silk blouse. I grabbed my tote bag off the counter by the door, pushed the boutique glass door open, and stepped out into a cold, light rain falling over the city streets. Dusk was creeping over the skyline, painting the clouds a murky burnt orange, and the quiet patter of raindrops on the sidewalk matched the dull, empty thud of my heartbeat in my chest. I heard fast footsteps rushing up behind me seconds later, and Ethan wrapped his arms tight around my shoulders, pulling me back against his chest, his voice soft and pleading, mirroring how he'd begged for forgiveness every time he'd messed up in our college relationship years ago. Wait, don't walk off like this. I know I've been distant lately. The company expansion has swallowed all my free time. Once we get married, I'll step back from the West Coast client accounts. We can take a full month off to travel anywhere you want. Scandinavia, the Greek islands, whatever you've always dreamed of. I stiffened in his embrace, unable to lean into him the way I used to. All I could smell was Mia's coconut perfume tangled with a cedar cologne, a sickening mixture that made my stomach churn. I thought back to the hidden laptop folder full of Mia's photos, the pink diamond pendant, the early morning coffee run where he prioritized her over me on my birthday, and a wave of cold clarity washed over me. He thought a vague promise of future travel could erase months of secret betrayal, that I'd fold back into his routine like I always had before, willing to overlook every lie for the sake of our wedding plans. I don't believe a single word you're saying right now, Ethan, I said flatly, pulling free from his arms and stepping back to create space between us. For 6 months, I've stayed late at client dinners covering your accounts, taken every verbal abuse from difficult factory owners so your brand's reputation stays spotless, skipped my own family holidays to fix your spreadsheet errors at the office. I've never once had someone else's perfume on my clothes, never hidden photo folders of another man on my laptop, never chosen a coworker over you on your birthday. You've never returned that same loyalty to me, not even close. Ethan's patience snapped, his tone dropping sharp, authoritative, the same voice he used to discipline junior staff at team meetings. This back and forth isn't productive. We've got a mandatory corporate banquet tonight. All our biggest industrial clients will be there. You're representing your firm as lead account director. We can hash all this out after the event ends, okay? Stop picking fights before a critical business night. Rain picked up speed, soaking through my blouse and dripping down my cheeks, and I watched him turn and walk back toward the bridal boutique parking lot without waiting for my response. He didn't care that I was heartbroken, didn't care that I'd caught him red-handed lying about Mia. All he cared about was protecting his public reputation at the corporate banquet that evening, ensuring no client caught wind of tension between his startup and my supply firm partnership. I stood in the rain alone, watching his figure disappear, and realized the man I'd loved for 7 years only valued me for what I could give his business, not for who I was as a person. I had no idea the banquet that night would deliver a far worse betrayal than the pink diamond necklace or hidden laptop files ever could. Ethan planned to parade Mia around in front of every single industry leader we'd spent years schmoozing, and every guest in the ballroom would immediately clock exactly what the two of them were hiding. What I didn't anticipate was Mia's unprovoked, vicious digital attack waiting in my text inbox once the night wrapped up, filled with explicit photos and taunting messages designed to break whatever small piece of my heart I had left. Next chapter, the corporate ballroom humiliation and Mia's brutal, unfiltered harassment that pushed me to finalize every piece of exit evidence against Ethan for good. The rain hadn't let up by the time I drove back to our high-rise to change for the corporate gala. I stripped off my damp silk blouse, tossed it straight into the hamper without a second glance. The coconut perfume clinging to the fabric still lingered thick enough to make me gag. I pulled out a tailored charcoal gown, matte satin, sharp shoulder cuts built for boardroom power plays, not soft romantic evenings. This wasn't a night for a vulnerable fiancé. I was heading in as Clara Bennett, lead account director with a 7-figure client portfolio, and I'd carry that unshakable professional mask no matter what Ethan threw at me. I spent 40 minutes touching up makeup, covering the faint red puffiness under my eyes from the sleepless birthday night prior. Every brush stroke was mechanical, my mind replaying the bridal shop argument on a loop. Ethan's immediate defensiveness, his dismissal of my pain as petty drama, his only priority being the night's client connections. He'd proven without a shadow of doubt that his company's image outranked every ounce of my hurt. I'd half expected a flood of apologetic texts from him while I dressed, but my phone sat silent face up on the vanity, 0 calls, 0 messages. He was already at the venue, prepping with Mia, and I knew it deep in my bones. The gala was hosted in the city's most exclusive 5-star hotel ballroom, floor-to-ceiling crystal chandeliers hanging over round linen-covered tables, open bars lined with vintage whiskey and champagne, wall displays showcasing Ethan's startup's product line. All the heavy-hitting industrial clients were present, CEOs, procurement executives, investors who'd poured millions into Ethan's brand, many of whom I'd personally courted and locked into multi-year contracts over the past 5 years. As a primary partner firm representative, I'd been seated at the main head table alongside Ethan for months of event planning. I'd imagined we'd sit side by side, united, fielding questions about our upcoming wedding together. That fantasy shattered the second I pushed open the ballroom's double oak entrance doors. Ethan stood dead center of the main reception cluster, surrounded by a circle of top-tier clients, laughing loud and easy, one hand casually resting on the small of Mia Carter's back. She wore an ivory floor-length gown strung with tiny pearls, the exact soft, delicate aesthetic Ethan had always told me he dreamed his future wife would wear, yet he'd forced me into sharp, structured business where for every industry event we'd attended together. Her pink diamond pendant glinted under the chandelier lights, impossible to miss, a glowing trophy draped around her throat for every guest to observe. She clung half a step behind him, eyes starting to me the instant I crossed the threshold, a subtle, smug tilt to her jaw that made my blood run cold. Low murmurs rippled through the crowd the second our gazes locked. I caught snippets of quiet chatter drifting my way as I walked toward the bar to grab a glass of sparkling water, refusing alcohol to keep my head razor sharp. That's his fiancée over there, right? Who's the girl glued to Ethan's hip then? They look far closer than business colleagues. Mia Carter, his junior admin words spread around the office. He prioritizes her over every staff member, promotions handed to her out of nowhere 6 months back. I kept my spine rigid, my lips curved into a neutral, unreadable professional smile, pretending none of the hushed speculation landed on my shoulders. Pity and curiosity weighed on dozens of pairs of eyes, but I refused to let my shoulders slump or my composure crack. If Ethan wanted to stage a public love affair with his admin in front of everyone who'd helped build his empire, I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of watching me break down mid-event. A 50-year-old procurement executive named Mr. Lawson wandered over to greet Ethan minutes later, his gaze flicking back and forth between Ethan and Mia with obvious confusion. He raised his glass in a polite toast, voice laced with gentle confusion. Ethan, this must be your new junior assistant? Impressive young talent you've recruited this year. A flicker of panic crossed Ethan's face, fast and fleeting, gone before anyone but me caught it. He forced a casual chuckle, masking his discomfort, and slid a glass of fruit punch from a passing server's tray into Mia's palm, swapping out the wine she'd been holding. His fingers lingered over hers for a beat too long, a protective, tender gesture I'd never once received in 7 years of partnership. Just Mia letting her observe the high-level client networking to learn the ropes. She can't handle heavy alcohol, so punch is safer for her night. That small, caring motion split an old wound wide open inside me. I flashed back to the first 2 years of Ethan's business lunch, when we survived on ramen noodles and back-to-back client dinners. I'd chug glass after glass of harsh bourbon night after night to keep clients happy, vomiting in hotel bathroom stalls between courses, my throat raw and stomach burning. Ethan never once stepped in to take a drink off my hands, never offered a non-alcoholic substitute, just brushed my exhaustion off with a flat, "This is part of the job, Clara." He'd never cared to shield me from the harsh parts of their industry, yet bent over backward to coddle Mia from even a single sip of wine. The unfairness of it all settled heavy in my chest, thick and suffocating. Dinner service began soon after, seating assignments posted clearly at the ballroom entryway. The main head table was reserved for Ethan, the largest investors, 3 top CEOs, and Mia. I'd expected her to be tucked away at a secondary staff table in the back of the room, standard protocol for junior admins at corporate galas. Instead, Ethan dragged out the chair directly to his left, gesturing for her to sit with a tone that left zero room for argument. "Take this seat, Mia. Pay close attention to the contract negotiations discussed tonight. This will be invaluable experience for your growth." I sat across from them at the head table, separated only by a floral centerpiece overflowing with white roses. Ethan turned to address the full table halfway through the salad course, his tone warm and performative, gesturing toward me for the benefit of every pair of watching eyes. None of this project progress would be possible without my fiancée, Clara's firm. Her team supply chain expertise pulled our launch timeline together single-handedly. He shot me a soft, manufactured smile as he spoke, the same fake charm he deployed to secure funding. Looking at him then, all I felt was nausea. He expected me to play the doting, grateful partner for the crowd, to ignore the woman pressed against his side, the diamond necklace spot behind my back, the hours he'd spent choosing her over me. An hour into dinner, Mr. Lawson had a few too many glasses of red wine and turned toward Mia, insisting she raise her glass to seal a loose preliminary agreement. Mia froze instantly, her face draining pale, eyes shooting straight to Ethan in silent panic, silently begging him to rescue her. Ethan stood up, so fast his chair scraped loudly against the marble floor, downing her full wine glass in one brutal gulp before anyone could react. The surrounding table erupted into loud, teasing hoots, everyone treating his over-the-top chivalry like an endearing inside joke between him and his young assistant. I'd reached my limit. I pushed my chair back, stuck between Ethan and Mia, my voice calm, low, and sharp enough to cut through the rowdy laughter around us. "Enough, Ethan. This spectacle's embarrassing for all of us." His jaw locked tight, and he shot me a venomous glare. Furious, I disrupted his carefully crafted public image in front of every critical client in attendance. I didn't stay to listen to his rebuttal. I turned and walked out of the head table, retreating to a quiet lounge area off the main ballroom to catch my breath. The gala wrapped shortly after 10 p.m. I waited in the hotel lobby for an Uber, fully expecting Ethan to follow me out and attempt to smooth things over with empty apologies like he'd done after the bridal shop fight. He never appeared. I later learned he'd stayed behind to drive Mia home again, prioritizing her comfort over mending the damage he'd done to our engagement in front of our entire professional circle. When I unlocked our apartment door an hour later, the silence hung thick and cold. I tossed my clutch on the marble kitchen counter, and my phone buzzed nonstop for 10 straight minutes, notification after notification flooding the screen. The number messaging me was unfamiliar, but I instantly knew who it belonged to. Mia had dug up my personal cell number from Ethan's work contacts, no doubt. I tapped open the text thread, and my blood ran cold. Page after page of taunting paragraphs, interspersed with dozens of explicit, intimate photos of Mia and Ethan tangled together in our apartment's master bedroom, on the couch we'd picked out during our first year of business success, even the balcony where we'd gotten engaged 6 months prior. Every frame was a deliberate attack, designed to strip away every last bit of security I held onto. Mia's first message blazed across the screen. You think sending him off alone after the gala makes you the winner? He's been mine for months, and he'll keep choosing me no matter what you pull. Next line hit harder. He stopped loving you a long time ago. Step back and let us be together. You're only dragging yourself through unnecessary pain by clinging to a dead relationship. I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the screen, processing each brutal word without breaking down. A bitter, hollow laugh bubbled out of my throat. For weeks I'd told myself Mia was just a naive, innocent kid manipulated by Ethan's charm, a helpless junior admin swept up in her boss's attention. These texts erased that illusion entirely. She knew exactly what she was doing, actively weaponizing their affair to torture me, fully aware of our upcoming wedding and the life I'd built alongside Ethan for 7 years. Ethan stumbled through the front door 20 minutes later, reeking of Mia's coconut perfume and cheap champagne, a half-empty cigarette pinched between his fingers. He'd sworn he'd quit smoking years prior for my sake. The ashtray on the coffee table overflowed with crushed butts, proof he'd been hiding this habit around Mia for months without my knowledge. He glanced up, spotted my illuminated phone screen displaying Mia's vicious messages, and didn't even bother denying it. Instead, he immediately rushed to Mia's defense, his tone defensive and harsh before I could utter a single word of confrontation. Don't go blowing up Mia's phone to fight with her, Clara. She's young. She's sensitive. She doesn't have a malicious bone in her body. Nothing's her fault. All of this mess falls on me. Just trust me when I say there's nothing serious between us, and we'll push forward with the wedding like we planned. He pulled a crumpled sheet of notebook paper out of his suit jacket pocket, covered in messy handwritten lines, a self-proclaimed guarantee scrawled in his rushed handwriting. He slid it across the counter toward me like a flimsy piece of paper could erase months of lies, public humiliation, and Mia's cruel harassment. I folded the guarantee neatly, then pulled the pink diamond jewelry receipt I'd found in his suit pocket days prior from my clutch, stacking both documents together and tucking them into the locked drawer of my nightstand. They were physical evidence, tangible proof of every betrayal I'd endured, stored safely alongside the hundreds of hidden photos I'd copied off his work laptop earlier that morning. In the weeks following that night, Ethan shifted into performative redemption mode. He left the office at 5 p.m. sharp every evening, canceled all non-essential client dinners, left his work laptop out in plain sight without password locks, and spent hours rambling about wedding flower arrangements and honeymoon travel plans to the Maldives, desperate to convince me he'd cut Mia completely out of his life. Mia vanished entirely from our daily orbit. No more run-ins at the cafe, no more mentions of her at dinner, no more lingering perfume on his clothing. For a brief stretch, the quiet false calm almost fooled me into letting my guard slip back down. Wedding preparations ramped up fast, pressured by both our families pushing for a seamless fall ceremony, every vendor deposit fully paid, venue locked in for a Saturday afternoon 3 weeks out. I buried myself in wedding logistics and backlogged client work to avoid unpacking the raw hurt simmering beneath the surface, telling myself I'd made a decision once the wedding day arrived, either walk down the aisle and bury all the betrayal forever, or leave him behind for good. Deep down, though, I already knew the second option was inevitable. His temporary good behavior was just another elaborate lie to delay the fallout he feared. The wedding morning arrived bright and crisp, the ballroom venue draped in white linen and ivory florals, dozens of family members, colleagues, and business partners filling the pews waiting for the ceremony to begin. I slipped into the same lace mermaid gown I tried on months prior at the bridal boutique, a soft veil pinned to my styled hair, my father waiting at the venue entrance to walk me down the aisle. The orchestra struck up our pre-selected processional music, the grand double doors creaking open as every head in the room swiveled to watch me step into the space. I'd barely taken 3 steps onto the rose petal carpet when Ethan's personal assistant sprinted down the aisle toward him, leaning in close to hiss an urgent update directly into his ear. I watched Ethan's entire body stiffen, all the relaxed, joyful wedding day warmth draining from his face in an instant, replaced by raw, unmasked panic, terror far more intense than any stress he'd ever shown over missed client deadlines or company financial scares. He locked eyes with me across the packed venue, his expression torn between fleeting guilt and an overwhelming, urgent compulsion to rush away. Mia collapsed all of a sudden. Paramedics are en route to her apartment, he called out, voice cracking loud enough for the front rows to hear clearly. I froze mid-step on the aisle, my father's arm steady under mine, a last faint flicker of desperate hope flaring in my chest. This was my final test, the last chance for him to choose me over her, to pick our 7 years of shared struggle over a 6-month fling with his young admin. What are you planning to do? I asked, my voice eerily calm despite the chaos swirling around me. Clara, I just need to check she's stable. I'll be right back before the vows start. Wait here for me, okay? Before I could respond, he spun on his heel and sprinted out of the venue's side exit, his tailored wedding suit flapping behind him, leaving hundreds of confused, stunned guests in his wake. All the elaborate wedding decor, the paid vendors, the travel plans, the years of sacrifice we'd poured into building a life together, none of it mattered to him the second Mia needed attention. As the whispers and shocked gasps rippled through the silent ceremony hall, my phone buzzed once more in my gown pocket. Another photo message from Mia popped onto the screen. Ethan hunched over a hospital bed holding her hand, her pale face stretched into a triumphant grin, a caption confirming I'd lost everything before I'd even said, I do. The worst blow wasn't his abandonment at the altar. It was the news waiting for me at my doctor's office 2 days later, a positive pregnancy test that tied me irrevocably to the man who'd left me standing alone on our wedding day. Next chapter covers the pregnancy reveal, the devastating hospital run-in with Mia, and my irreversible choice to walk away from Ethan for good. 5 years slipped past without me stepping foot back in the city. I buried myself in international supply chain consulting out of Zurich, partnered with Elias Voss, sharp, steady, a man who measured loyalty in consistent small choices instead of grand empty promises. We'd married 2 years prior, built a quiet, grounded life built on mutual respect, no hidden folders, no secret jewelry, no last-minute sprints to a rival's side when crisis called. At 39, I carried our 4-month-old child beneath my heart, a calm, wanted joy nothing from my past guitarnish. I'd only flown stateside to visit my sister's little girl, picking her up from preschool after wrapping a 3-week regional audit for Elias's firm. I barely finished kneeling to adjust my niece's sparkly backpack straps when a shrill, familiar voice cut through the hum of playground chatter. Mia. Her youthful glow from half a decade prior had faded thin, dark permanent circles dug under her eyes, her once polished designer dress replaced with a faded mass-market jumper, frayed sneakers on her feet. She'd spotted me instantly, and panic curdled into unhinged rage before I could even stand upright. You're here to steal my husband, aren't you? Come to take everything I've spent 5 years fighting for. Parents at the pickup gate turned their heads, craning to watch the spectacle unfolding. I brushed stray hair from my forehead, a quiet, unimpressed huff slipping out. After everything Ethan had done, after every taunt text, every public humiliation, Mia still thought I coveted the broken life she'd trapped herself inside. I didn't bother answering, just nodded to my niece and guided her a half step closer to my side, ready to walk away the second the conversation devolved further. That evening, old college friends hosted a welcome home dinner at a downtown steakhouse, private booth reserved at the back of the dining room. No one meant to utter Ethan's name, but it slipped out mid-toast, and the entire table went rigid as a tall, broad frame paused in the restaurant doorway. Ethan. His hair had grayed at the temples, shoulders hunched with a weariness I'd never seen during our years building his startup together. His gaze swept the table, landing on me, and every ounce of casual poise drained from his features, raw shock, followed by a wave of unspoken grief he couldn't mask. Sorry, wrong private room, he mumbled, voice graveled, and dipped his head to retreat. I met his stare evenly, cold neutrality wrapping around me like a coat. He was nothing more than a distant business contact from a former lifetime. No sting, no longing, no leftover anger. The moment the door shut behind him, conversation resumed like nothing had happened. Half an hour later, I excused myself to the restroom to reapply lipstick and collided with Ethan in the narrow carpeted hallway outside the women's washroom. Before either of us could speak, a scream split the air. Mia rounded the corner, their young daughter clinging tight to her hip, face twisted into unbridled hysteria. I knew you were sneaking off to meet her. All those nights you claim late work shifts, you've been chasing this woman down. Ethan's jaw tightened, sharp frustration edging into his tone, sharp enough to make their little girl flinch. Watch your volume and your language, Mia. We're in a public restaurant. You're making a scene? Scene? You abandoned your own wedding for me, and now you're sneaking around with your old fiancé behind my back. In her blind rage, Mia hauled their daughter forward and shoved the small girl hard into Ethan's chest. The child lost balance instantly, crashing onto the hard tile floor, bursting into terrified, shaking sobs. Tell your dad not to leave us for this stranger. Beg him to stay home with our family. Ethan's temper finally snapped. He stepped between Mia and me, walking her path before she could lunge forward, hands balled tight at his sides. Even if I spent every waking hour miserable with you, you have no right to drag our child into your pointless paranoia. Any other woman would be calmer, less vicious than you've become. Mia's self-control shattered completely. She reared up to rush at me, and Ethan threw his entire body between us to intercept her attack. The young girl's cries echoed down the empty hallway, drawing stares from servers and diners alike. I knelt down beside the trembling child, brushed gravel from her scraped knees, and spoke soft, gentle words to calm her tears. Don't worry, sweet one. I have no intention of ever becoming your mother. Everyone only gets one person to call mom. The girl wiped her wet cheeks, big watery eyes fixed on my midsection, the subtle curve of my 4-month pregnancy obvious beneath my tailored blazer. Then whose baby in your tummy for? I rested a light palm over my belly, a soft, genuine smile tugging at my lips, no trace of bitterness or performance. This little one belongs only to me and my husband, Elias. The hallway fell dead silent. Ethan's gaze locked onto my stomach, and all the fight drained out of him in one single breath. His throat bobbed violently, hands unfurling at his sides, every muscle in his body taut with a mix of devastating regret and crushing longing he couldn't hide from anyone watching. You're pregnant, he whispered, the words cracked and broken, barely audible over Mia's ongoing shrill screaming beside him. I gave a small, unemotional nod, no extra detail offered, no lingering eye contact to feed his remorse. Mia's insults blurred into meaningless background noise. Ethan couldn't tear his eyes away from my abdomen, every memory of our lost child crashing over him all at once. I didn't know, he tried to say, stepping half a foot toward me, desperate to close the gap between us. I stepped backward, creating clear, permanent distance, and his feet froze mid-stride. Doesn't matter if you knew or not, Ethan. This life isn't yours anymore. His shoulders slumped in defeat. He didn't spare another glance for Mia or their crying daughter, only ground out a hoarse, exhausted command toward his wife. Let's go home. That night, Ethan locked himself in his home office for 12 straight hours, ignoring Mia's endless screaming accusations from outside the door. She ranted about his nighttime sleep murmurs, how he whispered my name in every dream, how he'd stopped touching her completely within their first year of marriage. Ethan leaned his forehead against the cold wooden desk, a hollow, bitter laugh rumbling in his chest. He'd spent 5 years trapped in a loveless, chaotic household, all because he'd chosen a fleeting infatuation over the woman who'd built his entire empire beside him. Without hesitation, he grabbed his desk phone and dialed his corporate attorney, voice flat and final. Draw up full divorce paperwork immediately. I want it on my desk by sunrise tomorrow. A week later, I walked through the glass front doors of Ethan's company headquarters, alongside my husband Elias. The firm had spiraled into steep financial decline without my supply chain expertise guiding every major contract. Word had spread across the industry that Ethan's business couldn't sustain itself without the connections and negotiation skill I'd brought to the table 7 years prior. The receptionist introduced Elias as the CEO of our international consulting group, then turned to gesture toward me with quiet deference. This is Elias Voss, our lead acquiring partner. Beside him is his wife, Clara Voss. She's heading the full valuation and merger oversight for the buyout. Murmurs rippled through the lobby. Every long-term employee remembered the day Ethan abandoned me at our wedding altar, remembered how I'd single-handedly pulled the startup out of bankruptcy during its earliest struggling years. Ethan stood at the end of the reception counter to greet us, his face ashen, hands clammy as he extended one palm to shake mine. Mrs. Voss, thank you for coming to review the acquisition terms. Elias gripped Ethan's hand first, posture calm and authoritative, protective warmth sliding over his arm to rest lightly around my waist. All core valuation calls fall to my wife. Her judgment in industrial partnerships is unmatched worldwide. Every term she outlines will be non-negotiable. Ethan's face paled another shade. We filed into the glass-walled boardroom for day-long negotiations. Every data point I laid out sharp, precise, unflinchingly honest about the company's irreparable structural damage left in my absence. Ethan watched me lead the discussion, cold clarity sinking into his bones as he finally comprehended exactly what he'd thrown away. Not just a fiancé, not just a wedding day, but the only business partner capable of saving his company from collapse. During the midday break, I stepped out to the hallway restroom, and Ethan lingered in the shadowed corridor to intercept me. Clara, can we talk privately? Just 5 minutes? I halted my steps, maintaining a comfortable arm's length between us, tone professional and closed off, no softness to my words. Any business conversations happen inside the boardroom with legal present. Personal matters between us ceased to exist the moment you ran out on our wedding ceremony. I know I ruined everything. I've carried that weight every single night for 5 years, Ethan begged, voice thick with self-loathing. This company was our dream once. Can't you find a single shred of mercy for what we built together? I shook my head slowly, no flicker of sympathy softening my expression. The second you chose Mia over me at the altar, the word, we stopped holding any meaning whatsoever. You made every choice that led you here alone. I turned and walked back to the boardroom without glancing over my shoulder, leaving Ethan standing alone in the empty hallway, drowning in unrepayable regret. The merger wrapped 2 months later. Ethan finalized his divorce from Mia within weeks of our board meeting. The judge ruled Mia's volatile, abusive behavior unfit for full custody of their daughter, leaving Ethan with primary guardianship. Mia lost the wealthy lifestyle she'd spent years fighting to claim, forced to move into a tiny studio apartment working minimum wage administrative labor, all luxury assets seized to settle Ethan's divorce legal fees. The startup couldn't survive the acquisition restructuring, forced to downsize from its downtown high-rise office back to the cramped warehouse workspace where Ethan and I first launched the brand, 2 decades prior. That evening marked my 39th birthday, the anniversary of the night everything first unraveled 5 years prior. Ethan's phone still carried an unremoved reminder alert for my birthday, set years ago when we were still building a future side by side. He wandered out of the shrunken office building alone as dusk fell, fresh snow drifting soft and silent over the sidewalk, blanketing every old footprint left from our shared past. He leaned against the brick building facade, snow dusting his shoulders, watching distant streetlights blur through foggy eyes. A few city blocks away, Elias and I exited a small family hot pot restaurant after dinner, laughter lingering between us as cold winter air wrapped around our shoulders. Elias glanced up at the sky, pointing to the slow-falling snowflakes swirling overhead. Look, it's snowing for your birthday. I tilted my head upward, genuine, unburdened joy lifting my chest as I watched the snow drift down. Elias pulled a folded wool umbrella from his coat pocket, drawing me gently